this particular moment right now is very difficult. And people are always strapped for cash, but they're strapped for cash in a way that they haven't been in a long time. And I think that's part of the reason we wanted to make at least the content library separate from the rest of Admission so that you can sign up for that. And then there's a way you can upgrade to get access to everything else, to some of that community, to the hiring center, to our people, and more of our resources, to our live events as well. But at the very least, that piece of the puzzle of what we're talking about, which is like, if you have no idea where to look for advice, here's a library of content that we can provide to you where you understand where it comes from and you understand the perspective and that you're going to get something consistent. This episode of the e-commerce playbook is brought to you by OpenSend. Whether you're losing customers to untracked sessions or missing out on abandoned cart revenue, OpenSend has your back. OpenSend's identity resolution tech helps you identify anonymous high-intent website visitors, reconnect with your customers across previously unrecognized devices and browsers, and replace bounced emails with active ones. 1,000 top D2C brands use OpenSend to drive conversions and retention with unmatched precision. Go to opensend.com/book-a-demo and start your 2-week trial for just $1. Hey folks, welcome to the e-commerce playbook podcast. I'm your host, Richard Gaffin, Director of Digital Product Strategy here at Common Thread Collective. And I'm joined this week by a very special guest to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart. Our guest today is Grant Zanini, who is our VP of Education here at CTC. What's going on, Grant?
How are we doing, Richard?
Doing all right, man. Now, Grant is my boss, full disclosure here. So a little nerve-wracking having him here on the pod. But what we wanted to talk about today is something that touches both of us very closely. So as maybe some of you know, I'm the Director of Digital Product Strategy. Part of what that entails is I'm the head of a program called Admission here at Common Thread Collective. And Admission is essentially a hybrid training and then support platform that gives you access to CTC's resources without you actually having to become a member, or rather to join us and become a client on the service side. And what that's helpful for is brands that are in the 6-figure to kind of early 7-figure range get access to some of those resources without having to pay the agency price. So what we wanted to talk about today is that range. What brands struggle with at the 6-figure to early 7-figure level? In a lot of respects, it can be very different from what an 8-figure brand is going through. In some respects, it's pretty much the same. So we wanted to get specific on like types of brands that I'm seeing on a daily basis, and particularly maybe how the CTC methodology can help them and how we can help them on the admission side. So I think I wanted to kick it off with you, Grant, giving us a little intro to yourself and telling us a little bit more about your history, both with admission, CTC, and this type of brand.
Yeah, you brought up a good point in the beginning that I'm going to remind myself that we get a chance to talk about every day. And so that there are other people listening to this right now. So keep me on track as we scroll off and get into more conversation. Let's make this as valuable as possible. But, admission, just starting from the kind of where this idea came from originally, it came out of like many businesses, the idea of a purpose of need, right? So I was coming out, this is about 9 years ago now. I was coming out of, had come off from creating a business with my wife, an online business. During that chapter, through that, I realized in reflection, there are a lot of things that we were able to do due to the people that we knew. And there were also a lot of things that we were able not to do because of certain groups of people that we didn't have access to. And what was very clear to me is that anybody who is starting a business or who is in the early stages, an online operator or a marketer in this space, that you're in this world of especially 6-figure brands where you've kind of you've gotten to the part where you have a real business there, or you're working alongside a small group of people trying to solve things all the time. You're kind of out of the honeymoon phase. There's something there that has to get done. And the weight of that time is really, really heavy because all of a sudden you start to realize that where do you go next? The optionality is endless. Bad decision could be a little bit more detrimental. A good decision you feel it can have this really big swing. So there's this really, it's a really unique time in that phase of business. Coming out of that, I had known Taylor Holiday and Jordan Palmer for a while. We worked together in previous eras, and I had been able to see CTC and what they were starting at that point and what they were doing. And so it was kind of a blend of these two worlds where I realized that after being on this myself, that there was a really unique ability to be able to pick up the phone and call someone that that is a trusted expert that is doing something else that will give you that time because they're a friend or they're a previous colleague. So they'll give you a little bit of time that will save you an immense amount of time and effort to figure out and solve for.
Mhm.
So as I realized that, and then I realized, man, I wish I had more of that network available to you, right? As you're building this thing, what is that worth to you? And then as I saw what CTC was building and the content they're putting out and what they were doing, and just knowing those two guys themselves of how they thought about this world, I realized that there's a really unique bridge here that can be built between entrepreneurs, operators, or marketers that are in this space. What was really unique about CTC as well is that they were very niche at the point. They're all in on e-commerce. Even this was again 7, 8, 9 years ago, where e-commerce didn't look like it did today. But that's who the clients they were serving. And with about 30 or so full-time specialists that were sitting there, they were in the work. And as an agency of that size, like everybody's in the work. If you're 30 employees, everybody's working across multiple accounts, constantly trying to problem solve and do different things. That if you took that and you're able to take those individuals and be able to pull out learnings that they're seeing all the time and give that as an accessible thing to other people on that journey, it can be incredibly impactful. And this is also the time where like courses were quite big, right? It wasn't a novelty anymore. This is
Mhm.
where people were selling courses. It was not uncommon to go buy courses, spend a lot of money for courses. But what that left you with is just kind of um, a singular path where you get it, you hope it's not outdated, you go through it, and then you have to go apply it. And that was a really time intensive thing to do. Whereas it's like, what if we're able to create some type of hybrid model here where people
Mhm.
can come in, get access to an environment that is constantly changing. Marketing and advertising looks different every day. We know this, right? So if you pair that with a very niche genre or category like e-commerce at the time,
Mhm.
all of a sudden you have a really specialized state of things with a bunch of people here with that knowledge that are constantly learning and building from it. That if you can allow people into that way, access to that in certain ways, can you create something there that people can gain from that and get from that 6 to 7 figures? That was the whole idea.
Mhm.
Create more access for those individuals there in a way that made sense for them. And
Yeah.
so that's really where the idea of admission came from. And from there we kind of, landed on a lot of different things, and we launched it with them. The idea of that
Mhm.
someone can come in, access people, the content, the data, the knowledge and support in unique ways that worked for them so that they could continue to build their business or grow that brand in a way that was specific.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's jump into some of the specific struggles that brands in the six-figure range kind of deal with. And obviously, both of us have a lot of experience with this at this point. But this actually kind of segues nicely, or ties in nicely to the sort of history that you just gave of admission, because I remember like the very first tagline that admission had was like, "We're your growth team, not your guru," or something along
Really?
those lines, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because I remember like part of what you were interested in as somebody who had been part of a brand like that yourself was one of the biggest struggles at that tier of growth is that you have no idea where to look to for advice. So that's one part of it. And then, or rather, that's exacerbated then by the fact that there's so much advice out there. There's so many gurus that, like you were saying, there's so many training programs, and it's really, really difficult to understand what specifically you should and shouldn't listen to, what's signal
Mhm.
and what's noise. And
Mhm.
so, talk to us a little bit about maybe your personal experience with that, how you experience other brands. 95% of your web traffic leaves without a trace. No purchase, no opt in, no opportunity to re engage. Meet OpenSend, the platform that helps you identify unknown site visitors and re engage returning customers even after they switch browsers or devices. With OpenSend, you can identify high intent unknown site visitors in real time, automatically recover bounced emails, retarget via email, SMS, postcards, or ads, and plug directly into Klaviyo, Braze, and your favorite ESPs. It's like giving your marketing team superpowers. Try it for just $1 at opensend.com/book hyphen a hyphen demo.
Yeah, something that was true then and is even more so true today is that content is free and is everywhere. Right? That is an obvious. And my response back to that, even at that moment in time, was like, that is true. But the challenge with that creates a challenge in two very specific ways. Number
Mhm.
one, your time is incredibly valuable and a limited resource, especially when you're in that going from 5 to 6 figure to 6 figure to 7 figure business. When you're building a business at that size, as I kind of stated at the onset of this, how you use your time is critically important. Okay. So with content being free and everywhere, you could spend endless resources and time looking at a bunch of different things. That's an incredible. How do you streamline that? How do you get to a trusted source? How do you get to the content that makes sense for you and where you're at and trying to solve the problem that you're in that very, very moment?
Mhm.
Number one. Number two is that content right for you? So as I was saying, marketing is evolving on a daily basis, right? In most cases, there's also tactics. You can look up a tactics that one person over here that has a great experience is telling you was really right for them. And on the counter of that, someone's giving the exact opposite advice that also worked for them. So the challenge is like being able to decipher and get to the right content that is a trusted source for you that you can then take and apply to what you're doing. So I think that the ability to have access to, again, back to that point, 30 individuals that are seeing this across a bunch of different accounts, it's different. There are unique challenges to every brand and every account. It looks different. Platforms are always evolving and changing. That having people in it trying to do that themselves can share a better idea of where to look next, right? So we use the term guru in almost a negative sense in that way, but that's what a guru does, right? A guru is able to take you and help you lead you to one thing, but we didn't want this to lead on one person, one guru that has just one set of knowledge. We had a bunch of unique people here that could help you look into content that is everyone out, but can constantly provide content that is relevant, that is not outdated, that is always being constantly added to as these platforms are changing, that gives you the guidance that ultimately you need. And I think that was a really hard thing that I didn't have access to in the earlier days.
Mhm.
If I could find that, I found myself watching a ton of different YouTube videos and again, calling a bunch of different people. And then you kind of got to piece together things that make sense for you or in that right moment. So if we could find a way to save people time, again, content ever, if you can save time and you can get to the thing that you need that in that right moment, that is really important. So I think that
Mhm.
the focus on a very specific subject matter and your ability to have multiple viewpoints around that subject matter is a recipe for providing someone with a much more successful playbook than trying to buy one thing and hope you can apply it to yours.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I think like the big issue with the reason we were kind of framing gurus as negative back at the beginning there is that a lot of the times they offer you a solution and say, this is the thing that works.
Yep.
And oftentimes that's just not the way that the world works. It's not certainly not the way that e-commerce works. And so part of what we were trying to do and are still trying to do is come alongside you and say, like, this is what we're learning based on kind of what we're observing across all of these different clients that we work with, across like our whole data set. And this is like the series set of best practices that we have that if you apply this as a general template or philosophy, this may work for you. And that's kind of like, yeah, just being realistic about what we're offering there, which I think helps cut through some of the BSiness of a lot of gurus in the space. But I think too, like to a point that you made earlier, like one thing that I hear all the time, or people are implying to me all the time, is that one good piece of advice could change everything,
True.
right? Like if I get the right piece of information,
Yep.
this could be a sort of a life or death change for my business.
That's right.
At the 6 figure range, like maybe getting the wrong advice won't kill you, but the consequences are going to be much greater than if you're running an 8 figure brand or a 9 figure brand or whatever, right?
That's right.
So people are just constantly searching for that and applying advice. It doesn't
Mhm.
work. It doesn't work. It
Mhm.
doesn't work. But there feels like there must be something to unlock here because we have this base of organic revenue that shows me that people like are interested in this brand and there's something here.
Well,
So
and to that point, Richard,
mhm,
context is critical,
yeah.
right? So because you can hear something or read something a certain way, but without the appropriate context, maybe that guru was with truth in telling that's what worked for them. But without the proper context, how it is applied could look a lot of different ways. And so I think that's what we also believed of like going into this is like, okay, it can't just be constantly putting out new courses that led them there and said, best of luck. Like the context around that stuff oftentimes needed to be a conversation or oftentimes needed to be in a room like this where we can kind of talk through things with a few different people.
Mhm,
That when you pair those two things together, all of a sudden you hear it different, right? It's stated to you in a whole different way that's when power of unlock can actually happen. To your point, yes. I mean, we've
mhm,
seen this, right? Like
mhm,
there's nothing more gratifying than getting a note from a member that says, I just got off a call with so and so And this one little thing unlocked something that I had been missing for years.
Yeah.
And that's where that is true. And that's again being a bit dramatic in many ways, but at that size of a business, there's certain things that you could see on the other side so clearly, like, oh, just make these few adjustments
Mhm.
that, oh, I heard about that, or I might have done that a while back, or I tried it and you move on from it. We're just
Mhm.
oftentimes all of us as individuals are blinded by what you don't know. And that's a big part of this. What you don't know or where to look or how to find the right content you're looking for is a challenge. And that's where it
100%.
feels incredibly overwhelming when, yes, it's everywhere. That it's without the right context, without being able to have someone that can give you that extra support, it could be meaningless in ways.
Yeah, definitely. And but one of just kind of last point on this too is like one thing that I think we try to do, and that is often missing from like a lot of this sort of guru solutions that you see, is a reason why the thing that they're offering works. So a lot of
Yes.
the times it's like, hey, if you do X and Y, I don't know, you build your campaign this way, it'll sort of magically make things work for you without an explanation of like, what is the function here that's causing this to happen. And what we're trying to do on our end of it, in any way, is just to say like, well, the reason we build this campaign this way is because the Facebook algorithm is set up in such a way, blah blah blah, that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, if you want to get profit margin, and that's the thing that you're shooting for, you need to build your Facebook account a certain way because a cost cap will function to make sure that you're never overshooting your CPA target or whatever. So there's a clarity to the overall philosophy and framework that then says, now, if you understand that these things are true, now you can go out and apply them tactically. But that means the tactics could still change. That means there isn't one solution. There could be multiple solutions,
That's right.
but it all kind of comes back to this core philosophy.
We talk about this all the time. Like
Yeah.
we have to frame this as the reason we call ourselves education department is because that's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
This is it is our responsibility to help be the professor, the steward in this,
Mhm.
not to be the one that says, you need to do this is the way you got to be done. It's like one, that's not useful to most people. But two, that is what we believe to be our obligation here is to be able to give the background, give the understanding around it, give the fundamentals so that people can know where to look next and how they can better solve for what they're trying to go do. Not be the one that says it's going to be done this way. Because
Yeah.
if you work in marketing, you know it doesn't work like that, right? We deal with this all the time. Something can work really well today that does not work tomorrow. That is part of the journey here.
Mhm.
But it is our job to give very thoughtful reasoning as to why we're doing things, help people understand that. By doing that, you can then make better decisions.
Okay, so let's move on to our second point here. That's very closely connected to this first one, which is that like one thing that I've learned talking to just a ton of these entrepreneurs, both on sales calls and in the membership program, is that this is fundamentally, especially for like owner operators, this is like a really lonely experience.
Mm.
That people are feel themselves to be maybe the only person in their friend group even who's doing this right now. So the only person that they even know personally who's like kind of struggling with
Right.
this e-commerce stuff. And it's really difficult to find a community to build around that. And so part of that, of course, is like, well, that's why you end up going to YouTube for advice.
Mhm.
But part of what we wanted to offer is a way to get contact with like-minded founders and then also our people. So talk to me maybe a little bit about your personal experience with that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah. I alluded to this in my overview in the beginning.
Mhm.
When my wife and I were building this business, I there's about a handful of like four people that specialize in different things that I had a really good relationship over the years. We worked closely together, became friends. That when we did this, they were always like, hey, if you ever need anything, call me when it comes to this. And when you're in that kind of bootstrapping stage or you don't have enough money to pay other people, and there wasn't a whole lot of other options to say, I will take you up on. And so what I found myself doing a lot is calling those individuals and spending this, you're always kind of like, oh, I don't want to like waste too much of their time and you want to take them out to dinner and you can't really do that either. So you would just like get about an hour with them. And that what I found in those hour conversations, how much time they would save me because of what they knew they could inject into me. And I can even it's just like, hey, can you look at this, make sure it's set up right? Don't do it for me. Just show me how to kind of do it. Lead me there. I'll go around. I'll go spend the time doing it and I'll come back to you and just say it's right. And that validation, that time spent, I would find saved a ton of time and ton of money, wasted money. And so I was like, that's a very valuable thing. And like I said, then you would look for other moments like that. I'm like, I don't know anyone that can help me with this portion, SEO or whatever it might have been. And so then you're kind of out there scrambling and you're realizing how much time you're spending trying to find that. So that was that was an unlock in that moment to me. Is like if how can we help individuals? This is not unique to myself or my wife at the time. It was, how can we create more space where we can have those trusted resources that then talk to? I'll say another thing too is I go back to college many years
Mhm,
ago for me that one little thing that I stumbled upon that my final 2 years I took incredible advantage of is I wasn't great at showing up to big forum classes with professor up there. And, if I did show up, I would hope to get some notes. But what I did start to do is I would show up to the open office hours.
mhm,
What I realized is that all the professors had to have those in certain blocks. So by doing so, they want people to come, but most students want to go to them, right? So rather than oftentimes attend the large things, or even if I did, I would go to as many of those as possible.
mhm,
And what I found is there might be two, three, four, sometimes up to 10 people max. But the amount of access I would have in that moment with the professor, the guard is down. They're much more willing to sit there and kind of go through things with you. I would also sit there in the back and be able to listen to other people ask their questions. And from that, I would like, so all of a sudden in that 1 hour block, I was like hyper focused on being able to get so much more from the professor and other people around me that I would leave that at like a 10x of what I might have been able to do in a classroom of 100 people sitting there trying to take notes as they were speaking towards us. So
mhm.
that was the thing that's like, I can, that environment where you can kind of show up in a smaller group and what you can draft off of other people and then have your own ability to ask very specific questions and get your answers. Again, the context is key. I would be able to learn a much faster, different way than the other setting. That worked for me. And so those are just a few of the principles that as I was on my own journey of this and as I was coming out of that journey as well, I was like, those are really impactful things. When you're educating and when you're part of this things of acquiring these skills for the first time, and you're going somewhere you don't really know you're going to go. Those are really critical moments to be able to say, how can I get there faster with less mistakes? Because they're going to happen regardless.
Mhm.
And so I think those are two things that we talk, you and I, as from over the
Yep.
years and how we can make this more impactful people on this journey. We have a unique set, unique skills in different ways. How do we give that same type of access to different people? And can we replicate that in ways that talking to members is that useful to them? So I'm curious, throwing the question right back to you as well as you talk to these guys all the time. What is, how does that, what does that look like for a lot of these, 6 figure, low 7 figure brands as they're going through this path? That challenge of hiring or being able to get alongside other experts
Yeah.
that are really good at this. You don't have the capital to hire them. What do you
Yeah.
do?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I think that the constant struggle and this honestly kind of segues into a couple of our other points nicely, but, like, the constant struggle is to understand, like, what yeah, like you're saying, like, what hiring choice do I need to make to get the the type of support that I need, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like, do I hire an agency? Do I hire a freelancer? Am I in-housing this? Do I hire some, like, my friend's kid or whatever says he knows Facebook ad. Like, there's all these sort of different options, and it's really hard to know, kind of like we are saying with the first one, like who you should trust and what's going to make sense. And I think what a
Mm,
lot of people run into is that, like, they're taking they have gone through a series of failed experiments in this particular process, right? Of, like, finding the right community, hiring the right people, whatever. And so, like, the best moments for me, like, as when I'm sort of like running the admission program is in some of these live calls that we'll have on a weekly basis where, we have 5, 10 people jump on and one of our people will jump on as well. They'll just have an open Q&A. They can ask any question they want. Just people discovering that, like, hey, wait a minute, this other person has the exact same problem that I do.
mm,
So
mhm,
people will come to these calls and be like, I'm having this, like, fundamental creative volume issue. I
mm,
can't figure out how to get my account, or I can't figure out how to get out of the learning phase right now. I can't figure out how to get this to spend.
yep,
And the next person will jump on with their question, and their question will be like, huh, my question is also, I'm having a creative volume problem. I can't get this to spend. I don't know how to, you know, enabling creative volume is really difficult for me. What am I supposed to do there? And then someone else will jump on. They'll have a really similar question or a really similar issue, but then they'll say, like, actually, we've figured out this thing, this UGC sort of like flywheel or whatever. And this is
mhm,
actually cranking for us. And that's great. And so people can kind of share notes on these things, but also fundamentally be able to see that the problems that they are having are not unique. And I think a lot of the times that can be a big unlock for people is understanding that, like, they're not dumb,
mm,
which is a big thing that I've, like, actually literally heard from people. It's like, I just, like, I'm embarrassed to show my Facebook ad account on this call or whatever because it sucks so much. And then somebody else will show it and they'll be in like a really similar situation.
Yep.
Somebody else will be really having trouble spending through 4 grand or something, you know? So I think that's the experience that I get. And like when I feel like admission is working its best is when people are sort of understanding that they're not alone in this. The problems are not unique and that they're solvable.
Well, you know what the
So,
natural
yeah,
behavior too, to oftentimes to that when you feel dumb, I don't know how to solve this thing.
yeah,
We go and hire. We
yeah,
go and we spend money to get and oftentimes like, hey, what do I have to go spend to do? I'm going to go throw this at this one problem and let someone else go figure it out for me.
yeah.
And the challenge with that is oftentimes they won't figure it out. Right. And now all of a sudden you wasted a pretty good chunk of change around something that didn't get you any further. Or say they do solve it for you. Now all of a sudden, okay, why did that work? I'm not too sure, but keep going. Here's more. Keep feeding the ATM, and let's just keep this thing going. And at a certain point, it won't work.
Hmm.
And unless that person is alongside you, incentivized for whatever ways, again, let's assume that you can't hire them on full time or part time. They're also doing this for 10 other clients because they're a
Hmm.
freelancer or a contract. Like,
Yeah.
and so while their interest may be trying to help you and want to do it, and there are a lot of good people out there that do this, great. But what that could do is if you're not understanding it well enough or why they're doing it or what's being done there, then again, it does put you in a place at some point where it's going to be harder to hire for, or it will stop working. You don't know what to then go do. And so
Yeah.
again, if you have the money to spend, do it. It's great. And it's worthwhile once you get there. But part of this whole journey is, again, you're a capital allocator. You're trying to figure out, does it go here or go, if it's going to that thing right now, you
Mhm.
have to take away from somewhere else. So now you got to spend your time and energy on that. So you want to be able to deploy it in areas that are going to be most beneficial for you. And that's the part is like, you can't solve something. If there's a way that you could have more access to those people to pick up the call, the trusted source or whatever, that could be a way to offset, to
Mhm.
allow you a bit more runway to use your capital in other ways. So that again, once you learn it, now you can apply it, you can do it, you can then go look at things. I mean, this is very fundamental. I get that, but it wasn't, there wasn't like very specific resources where you can turn for these things. And I think that's
Mhm.
where like we kept going back to. And still to this day is how, if we can help solve for those things, then again, it gives these individuals more time to go do it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we've kind of just sort of transitioned into our next point here, which is around the struggle to hire agencies and how
Yeah.
difficult it is at this particular phase. But I think like one thing that I've really noticed, or that I find just as a general observation about like the agency world, and particularly the agency world in ecom, and that includes things like freelancers and whatever, is that hiring a marketing agency is it's a weird environment where you're like you pay a premium for what is mostly a bad product.
Yep.
And that, just to be frank, right? Like it's an odd environment where you can expect to pay a lot of money for something that'll maybe work 40% of the time. And that's not usually how that transaction goes. And so like I think part of what we're sort of identifying is that there's something fundamentally broken about that relationship. And we've made no bones about that on the CTC side of saying like, yeah, we started this agency because we had such bad experiences with agencies. This is a little bit of a similar thing where it's like clearly there needs to be a different model for thinking about how you at this phase of your brand interact with the agency world. And paying a freelancer 5K, an agency 10K or whatever a month as a gamble doesn't make a lot of sense.
Mm.
You're putting $5,000 in and what you get out is sort of like honestly, like in practice, a lot of the time it's like you're saying maybe this will work.
Mhm.
Um, and and so I think we wanted to figure something out that a hybrid solution, like you were saying, that just makes more sense for this phase of your business. So let's talk about like a couple things. So one, maybe continuing talking maybe about your specific journey with agencies, if you had one, and then also how that kind of relates to our final point, which is just about the economics of being in business at this level. What was your experience, if any, with like agency hiring?
Well, yeah, I would actually start with the economics. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that everybody can tell you they're gonna have good agency experience or they're gonna have bad ones. I think that what we find most people that come to either CTC or to into admission that they have had both at that point. Even in
Yep.
the earlier stages, they've been burned a few different times or it didn't make sense. And they might have had some really great experiences and they're looking. So there's a reason why they're calling and being a part of it. There's a lot of amazing freelancers. There's a lot of amazing agencies out there. But again, what it comes down to is I think you got to look, is the relationship right? Are the economics there? Are they, incentives aligned? Like, and I think to get to a lot of those answers, you have to go through this. And so part of this whole thing of like creating a path that allows, again, business owners, operators, early stage marketers, that during this phase, the more that you can go through and get a clear understanding of things and like different, not having to go all in, not having to go hire a freelancer right away, not having to go hire an agency right away, you're going to make those decisions down the road much,
Yep.
right? And so we see that when they come in at that level to CTC with those experiences, we can be a better partner.
Yep.
But part of this is discovering that journey and creating more runway for yourself. And the economics, the capital behind it is the number one thing.
Mhm.
Okay. It just is. Like, so when you're at the stage making critical decisions around how should I be using these few dollars that I can, these resources, my time. We keep talking about, a big part of this conversation. I feel like I go back to is preserving your time, creating ways for you to understand a lot of different things and solve the problems that you need to now, getting to those, saving yourself time by getting to those problems faster, right? You need more access to do that. And then how do you spend the early stage dollars in ways that's going to be most meaningful to you? So I think my own experience is there can be great relationships and there can be bad ones. You probably maybe experience both at this point. But the way that you get to yourself a place where like, how can we, the ideal path would be to learn as you be able to build the building blocks as you go to learn and be able to preserve as much of that, capital as you can and spend your time as wise as you can to keep growing to that next phase. And once you get to that next phase, there's more doors that unlock and open and allow you that kind of freedom to go in different ways to make those decisions in a more calculated way. So what I would say too is like, I'll just jump straight to one of the solutions that we had and that we still
Mhm.
offer to this day is like, what if we can give people access to just 1 hour calls,
Mhm.
1 hour consults where they get to come on in that hour, one on one, you're being with another specialist that you can go through real intimately into whatever problem you want to solve. So if it's inside an ad account, you can jump on with a meta buyer and then get in, you can share your screen and go through like that. The same ideas I've talked about now a couple times is being able to call a trusted source and sit down with them really quickly and say, can you look at this? Where you see something that I don't see it? Or why can't I unlock this spend? Or why do I do like just having somewhere you can't get that on YouTube. You can't get that necessarily even in a larger community. You can't get that sitting in a classroom of 200 other people, right? You need to show up to that office hour. You need to be able to have that one-on-one call for someone to sit down and go through. So like that was one of the solutions that we kind of landed on. I was like, that could that be a solve for what we're kind of talking about here? During this phase, having access to be able to do those kind of things, 1 hour calls, not 1 month contracts.
Mhm.
Because now I'm paying you $5,000. You're valuable. Your time's there. I'm not there yet. But I'll do a bunch of 1 hour calls to give me like through these immediate moments of things that I can do to help me unlock. I still have to go do the work, but I'm learning during those things. I'm adjusting. I'm learning as we go, and I'm making those decisions with someone who has been there and can see it differently than I can.
Mhm.
And that is a way to completely expedite that process of learning what you need to be doing, maximizing that time to then solve the problems you need to solve at that moment. So um, that's my, I mean, curious from your side, like as the hiring, what we call the hiring center, that one-on-one calls, that's been something we've always since day one we've done
Mhm.
and do to this day. What is the kind of feedback you get when typically what is the normal journey for someone who has one of those calls? Do they come back? Is it useful? Is it not? Like what have you seen? I mean, is it something
Yeah.
um that's true to everything I just said or not?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think that, like, generally speaking, the feedback on a hiring center call was like, "Thank you, this is amazing. Can I talk?" Yeah. I think
Mm,
that that's kind of the point that we've been kind of making throughout about this idea that at this phase of the business, there's like one thing that can unlock everything, but it's hard to get to it. Like, I feel like that moment happens on hiring center calls probably the most frequently because what you're doing is taking your business that maybe, like, I don't know, you haven't had maybe the extent to which another person has looked at it has been,
mm,
like, very minimal. Maybe, like, your one freelancer who's a friend of a friend has looked at your account or whatever, but other than that, it's just you. You're just living in it. You don't really understand the context of what's happening. But within an hour sitting down with, like, one of our paid social buyers who have seen, you know, probably literally hundreds of accounts and spent literally billions of dollars, like, what you're gonna see is what they're gonna be able to see is they're gonna be able to read your account in the context of all of the other accounts that they've seen, and they're gonna be able to tell you I tell everybody this on sales calls. They're gonna be able to tell you this pretty quickly what, like, the 3 things you could change right now are,
yeah.
and it's gonna be really straightforward. So I think like that, it's you're getting access to the very best in the world at this
Mm,
for, I mean, really an honestly pretty inexpensive fee. So I think that's yeah. The real like big specific unlocks happen there because every business is different, every account is different, and getting one-on-one direct eyes on your unique situation is really important
yeah.
for that, I think. So yeah, I mean, I think it's probably no secret that this has been not so subtly a bit of a pitch for admission here. So we talked a little bit about the hiring center and how that touches on that specific issue, both look how it helps economics, how it helps with the like
Mm,
finding the right information piece of it. But yeah, I wanted to just kind of quickly discuss some of the other things like our content library, for
mm,
instance, which to go back to our first point around having no idea where to look for advice. Again, the idea behind like the content that you're going to get is it's going to be CTC's content from CTC's perspective with
mm,
CTC's philosophy.
yeah.
You're not going to be getting competing points of view unless, for instance, I don't know, Taylor's decided to go off on something and he disagrees with some of our media buyers on small things. Like, but I think that's part of what you get as well. You're getting a kind of a multitude of voices approaching things tactically, but from the same sort of philosophical perspective. So, one thing too that I like to say about the content library is it's like, particularly from where it started, we've kind of moved past it being like a course per se in
Mhm,
terms of here's the beginning, middle, and end, and once you kind of go through this, you're going to know Facebook ads because the truth of the matter, of course, is that like meta ads are not, it's not like learning geometry where you know, you can start your geometry 101 course and you learn about trig and trig is always going to be the same. And by the time you're done with the course, you know enough trig to go do trig in the real world, which I don't know if any of us ever have. Right. But with Facebook ads, it's like, for instance, currently all the sort of Andromeda changes that are rolling out, meta ads are changing all the time. The fundamental principles of marketing don't change though. And so like what we want to do is have ongoing updating content from like a consistent perspective. So I think that's what you get with the content library. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I want to say something really clearly because you've helped me get over this hill. That
Mhm,
when we started admission, my belief was that um, if we want to give more access and make this such an incredible, valuable place
mhm,
and a resource for that people would leave and say, "Wow, this is way more value than I was expecting for this price." That my belief from the beginning was that we had to put everything into one, all inclusive,
mhm.
right? You would get all the content, you would get all the support, you would be able to go hire one on one, you get everything in one place. And what we knew is that not every member would use all areas of it, but to be a part of it, it's all of it there so that as you evolved, it evolved with you. And that's served us really well over the years. But I think that what you've really helped see to this point is we also have to evolve. We always have to talk to our members, understand what they need and what they don't need. And over the time, as more people have gone through it, you can start to see that certain people really gravitate towards certain things.
Mhm.
So rather than say, oh, we no longer need this part of it, we still have all the same elements to it. But could there ever be a version where people can just get access to a very specific part of it that they want?
Yeah.
And I think that's where even part of the reason why we decided let's talk about this more today. Let's bring more of this to public because we're playing with that idea of
Yeah.
allowing people to let's just take the content side. Some people want all the content, which is, find a better place where you can have a very concentrated amount of content around this, very specific industry. They get added new content every single week. And with removal, it's like there's a ton of work that goes into that, just that one part of admission.
Yeah.
And that's some parts that's the only part that people want. And so could that be possible? So if we go back to our, what the goal of this is to create more access for people who wouldn't normally have it, then we probably should listen. And so I think that I just want to call that out because I think part of this conversation right now and previously over the years has allowed us to say we have to continue to evolve it as well. And you've been a big part of helping us find that and see that. So that's something I'm really excited about personally. I'm like, when that moment does come, then I think that people can be really interested in that part of it as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think like part of what we're trying to do here with admission is evolve to kind of fit the needs of the market. I mean, as every product does. And I think part of that is that like what we want to do is make, I mean, you're sort of hinting at this, but what we want to do is make the content available kind of like as a separate thing or as like you can get that piece of the whole. And I think part of that has to do with, again, like I was saying, like the evolution of the market of like, this is what we've been talking about have been, these are all struggles with six-figure brands that have been true for at least the extent of the time that you've been a part of CTC and have founded a mission. So like 5, 6 years. Of course, like there's fundamental things that will always be true. But I think this particular moment right now is very difficult.
Mm.
And people are always strapped for cash, but they're strapped for cash in a way that they haven't been in a long time. And I think that's part of the reason we wanted to make at least the content library separate from the rest of admission so that you can sign up for that. And then there's a way you can upgrade to get access to everything else, to some of that community, to the hiring center, to our people, and more of our resources, to our live events as well. But at the very least, that piece of the puzzle, what we're talking about, which is like, if you have no idea where to look for advice, here's a library of content that we can provide to you where you understand where it comes from and you understand the perspective and that you're going to get something consistent. So by the time everybody out there listens to this, that will be rolled out. You may have seen some emails about it. So please check it out. We would love to have you in the admission platform there. So we'll have a link to the checkout page for that in both the show notes and then in the comments, or rather on the description and the YouTube version of this particular podcast. But yeah, so we're opening it up. We're making it more widely available for a reduced fee, monthly fee, to just get access to that content and start that journey of kind of having an interaction, not only with our content, but with our people as well. So any other thoughts you had there,
No, I
Grant, you
would
want
I
to
would
walk
just
into?
say for the listeners that if there's one thing to take away from this, know that we're always trying to make this better and solve for these things. Know that we've sat in the seats that you're kind of sitting in now, and we get the fortunate opportunity to see it on a daily basis. And that's kind of what the idea of having this conversation was, is to bring some of that to light. But also say that we don't have all these answers, but we look for ways to directionally lead that group in different ways. And there's a lot of stuff out there. It's really hard to navigate. And so the challenges that you might be facing right now or feeling are very normal challenges. And there's a lot of good things. There'll be more ups and downs with it, but that we're trying to create a space, that a trusted place you can look and go help, whether it's our free content that's always out there, or you join in mission in different ways, or you come into the CTC network and as a part of a client or an employee on the client side. That these are all things that it is something that drives not only Richard or myself, that everybody here at CTC is driven kind of around this core goal of constantly trying to find ways to better individuals' business. And whether you're on 6-figure path, 7-figure path, 8-figure path, 9-figure path, we see in a lot of different areas, but it's something that is at the end of the day core to us. And why we say education is because that's where it all comes from. So I hope that's the thing that gets me excited to wake up every day, work alongside you and everyone else here, is that it gives us that opportunity to meet more folks like, and see how we can learn from each
That's right. All right, folks. Well, we're going to leave you there. We're at 42 minutes, went a little long because this is what I like to talk about. But so we're going to have, again, like I was saying before, link in the show notes, link in the YouTube, around what we're calling Admission Light for now. This is our content only library access. If you want to kind of get, like I was saying, get that journey started with getting access to the content and to the support and the voices that you need at that 6-figure level. Okay, cool. Well, great chatting with you. Thanks for joining us, Grant. And we will see you all again next week. Take care, y'all.